Well, let's turn to Labour, because there's in a way a slightly topsy-turvy row in that party at the moment. John McDonnell on the left, apparently supporting the Tory tax cut. Some of the traditional old-school party, the ones who were in control in the 2000s, are less happy with that. They want that money directed to what they see as better causes. I'm now joined by the Shadow Local Government Secretary, Andrew Gwynn. Very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Local government is your bag. Is austerity over in local government?
It absolutely isn't, Evan. And of course, the one thing that the Chancellor could have done in the budget was to stop the £1.3 billion cut to local council budgets next year that's already hardwired into the government's spending plans. That hasn't happened, alongside the devastation that we've seen caused by cuts to social care and children's services, means that our councils are on the edge of breaking point.
Right. So the budget could have stopped the 1.3 billion cut next year. One way of doing that would have been not to give the tax cuts to primarily middle income and disproportionately, perhaps in cash terms, to the better off income groups. Now, so explain this business of why you would support that tax cut. Why don't you take that money and say, look, if we were running the country, we'd take that money and give it to local government, like you've just said?
Well, of course, the first important thing is that we are not the government. We are not in control of this.
But we're allowed to ask you what you would do in power.
But it is quite an important point, because were there a John McDonnell budget being announced today, we would be announcing that there would be no increase in taxation for the 95% of low and middle income earners, but for the 5% top income earners earning over £80,000, there would be a small increase in taxation to start to put right the damage that's been done to our public services. And that's the difference. We're committed to fair taxation, Evan, and that's what the next Labour government is committed to do. It's to reversing some of the corporation tax cuts. It's about making sure that money goes back into our public services, because if you want good quality public services, if you want police on the beat, if you want to ensure that social
give the money away to tax cuts to better off families too. This is the bit I don't understand. You aren't in government, but it's perfectly reasonable to ask you which bits of the budget you think are wrong and which bits are right. You're willing to specify that. So why don't you just say the tax cut could be better spent on local government, which are facing parent?
Because that isn't what is presented to us on Thursday. What's presented to us on Thursday? Firstly, we will oppose the budget. But when it comes to the budget resolutions, the taxation resolutions, the whole of the income tax changes that affect millions of low and middle income earners, as well as those higher rate taxpayers, it's bundled as a single option. Now, I do not want the Labour Party to be in a position, Evan, and this is important, whereby those at the very bottom lose out because we vote against a tax cut for them. What we will do is, when we come into government, we will correct the income tax.
But look, isn't the basic politics here is that you want to pretend that you can completely restructure the state with nobody apart from 5% of the population noticing that they're paying any more? And I think the IFS, Carl Emerson of the IFS at the last election said of the costings, the pretense is it can all be funded by faceless corporations and the rich. Ultimately, if you're saying only 5% of people are going to pay it, it is not going to be as transformative as you're implying. You need tax rises to go down the income distribution, quite possibly to a vast bulk of the population, but certainly to people who are rich, people who are between the kind of 20th and the 5th percentiles, who are right up there. They may be not the absolute richest. You can't do it without taxing some of them, can you?
But look, politics is a question of priorities. We set out our priorities at the last election in our manifesto. I think what is important here, Evan, is that we are committed to starting to reverse the decline in our public services. That means making sure that money goes into children's services, into adult social care and into local government and policing. We're committed to doing that in a fair and transparent way, and that is for the next Labour government to really bring forward some transformative taxation and spending policies, and that's what we're committed to do.
Andrew Gwynn, thank you very much indeed.